Friends, Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project. This is the princess herself, Huck L. Berry. And yes, she's irate. She said, "Dad, I heard from the fans you haven't been showing my picture." So that is her in her cape. We're actually out on a boat that day on Flathead Lake. And that's her life preserver. And there's also a strap on the back, so when she's in the water, I can just grab it by the back and haul in 105 pounds. But she's doing good. Oh, she also wanted me to show you this. One of you sent this to me. This is hilarious. A license plate. Huck TV. Yes, of course, it's her channel. She's the famous one. And thanks for being here. Don't forget, we've got the Bigfoot Cruise, Bledsoe, Hauser, Paulides. Yes, the Bigfoot Cruise. You're going to want to get on it. September, leaves out of Seattle, going to Alaska. All right. Go to Gather Up Events, Gather Up, one word, and find all the info you need. Appreciate it. So today was a good day. I had a lot of emails come in about the movie. Thank you very much. And I had a very nice email come in from a lady that's gone on the cruise before. Super nice. I'm not going to say her name. Let's just say, "Hey Batman, please accept my apologies for leaving immediately after viewing the movie and not giving you the courtesy of sharing my thoughts on how spectacular the movie is, or even saying goodbye. My thoughts were on the traffic I'd have to make it back to Seattle in time. Dave, what you have created is so powerful. You have given the missing a voice, keeping their memories forever alive and giving those who love them some emotional comfort. I am proud of you. I see the hard work you have put into this project, which has probably cost you in ways no one knows but you. I'm grateful for the sacrifice because this film, in combination with your past work, will make more people wake up to what is happening in the national parks and how they can keep themselves safe. Speaking of being proud of you, I believe your son is too. I know my son made all this for me before he left. I get it. And it's not an easy thing to keep going and going and going. And knowing that the family you had is no longer. It's very hard, really hard. I met so many great people in the last two movies, I lost track of how many I could count. We flew to New York, interviewed people there. One of the nicest families I ever met. When we were in Port Angeles, met the sheriff of the county, Brian King, one of the nicest men you would ever want as your sheriff. Trust me, he's in the movie. And the parents of the missing that I met were so committed to finding their kids. The efforts that were made, that are explained in the film, are off the chart. I mean, I couldn't fathom before I started this project how hard many people would try to find their loved one. Oh, I can understand it. It's something I would do. I get it. But it's like that inner calling. It's like that relationship between father-daughter, father-son, mother-daughter, mother-son. It's so strong. It's been built into us in an innate way that pulls us so hard and emotionally drains us when they're gone. One of the things I said at the premiere, this last movie wasn't fun. And I don't mean that telling the stories of in the past movies has been fun. The Sasquatch movie was a bit of a relief from making movies about missing people because it didn't have an undertone of darkness. The missing people do. And that's why it drains me, really. And everyone, you're so kind, everyone has said, well, Dave, when will the next one come out? I want to remind people that I released 2 big movies within 4 months of each other. American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Monster. And now Missing 411 National Parks, Washington State. Nobody does that. Nobody. Now, I had a great team working around me that helped get this thing, both movies, going. I appreciate that greatly. But it's just a tremendous drain emotionally, physically, etc. And I really appreciate you guys. I met so many great people at the premiere. Came by the table, introduced themselves, said who they were. It's humbling. Really humbling. Now, I told many of you, hey, if you know of a case, a missing person that fits our profile points, send it to me at missing411@yahoo.com. I read them all. The case I'm going to talk to you about today, one of you sent it in. I never would have found this one. It was only a local story. It should have been a national story, but it wasn't. So thank you very much. Now, this case involves 2 men that disappeared. And it's a bizarre case. First man's name was Don Schaller, 48 years old. Second man's name was Don Rodriguez, 57 years old. Yeah, the Don and Don case. Prior to the day they disappeared, they didn't even know each other. They were missing July 3rd, 1998, from the National Cherry Festival Air Show in Traverse City in northwest Michigan. Now, Schaller, special guy. He was a pilot from Quincy, Illinois. He had commercial and instrument ratings and 5,500 hours of flight time. Most of the commercial pilots that you're flying short routes with on Delta, United, etc. these days, most of those pilots don't have 55 hours of flight time. Really. He was a veteran, flew in Vietnam. He was also a registered professional golfer. And he flew jets at air shows around North America for a company called Air USA. And then the plane that Schaller was flying on this specific day was pretty cool. It was called an Aero L-39 Albatross, single engine, manufactured in 1984 in Czechoslovakia. It was built as a trainer for Eastern European fighter pilots. 2-passenger, front and back. This plane was last inspected 40 hours earlier. Total airframe time was 954 hours. It was fast, sleek, fun to fly. You could actually buy this plane at that time for somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 as a used plane. There were 250 of them flying in the U.S. at the time. Now, 5:10 p.m. on July 3rd, that L-39 with Schaller at the controls landed in Traverse City from his home in Illinois. It was there, and he was paid to fly at the air show the following day on July 4th. Schaller landed his plane, met with the dignitaries at the airport, and he was one of multiple special pilots that had arrived. The Canadian military had a C-130, and the Blue Angels had their C-130 there as a support plane. And the Blue Angels were flying later that day on the 4th. Schaller was introduced to a pilot that he had offered. Let me back this up. Schaller said that when he arrived, he wanted somebody with local knowledge to go with him and fly around the area, so he got familiarized when he was flying the next day, leaving the airport, going in the flight pattern, flying out over Lake Michigan, etc. He wanted somebody with local knowledge and somebody that the committees thought was deserving of flying with him. Well, he was introduced to a local legend and his new passenger, a man named Don Rodriguez. Don was 57 years old. He was a flight instructor at Northwest Michigan College in Traverse City. He had over 10,000 flight hours, loved by many. He was chosen to take the ride with Schaller and familiarize him with the area for the air show. Patricia Delaney was Don's wife at the time. She was later interviewed and she stated, "I don't think there would have been anything that would keep him off that ride." Well, I understand that. To fly on a super fast rocket ship plane like the L-39, which was a fighter pilot's training plane, that'd be like a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Of course I understand. Everyone would want to do that. And Don and Patricia had one son named Doug. Now, Don was taught to fly when he was a young man in a 1946 J-3 Cub. He later in life tracked the plane down and purchased the plane he soloed in. He later taught his son how to fly, and his son, Doug, soloed in that same Cub aircraft. It's kind of a cool story. Really cool. And his son was still flying. Now, the Aero L-39 was equipped with ejection seats and parachutes. Nobody knew at the time that the plane left Traverse City if those were functioning at the time. You can see, sleek plane. The air show started the next day, July 4th. Don Rodriguez knew that airspace around Traverse City because he just lived a little bit southwest in Beulah, and he taught at Northwest Michigan College. He knew that space like you'd know your way to the store. He was the optimum person to give Schaller the recon ride, or at least escort him on the ride. Now, prior to Schaller and Rodriguez leaving on their short trip, it wasn't going to be long. It's going to be leave the airport, fly the flight path, take him out over the areas he may want to see and recognize, and be back. Less than a half an hour. Before they left, they took one photo. This is the photo. Schaller, the pilot of the L-39, and Rodriguez, the flight instructor from the college. Now, they were going to take the same flight path that Schaller would have taken on the air show. Prior to leaving, Schaller loaded the plane with 183 gallons of jet fuel. Schaller was in the front pilot seat and Rodriguez was the passenger in the back. At about 6:25 in the early evening, the guys were in the plane taxiing down the runway to take off. I can only imagine how fast Don Rodriguez's heart was pounding. Well, at 6:31 p.m., the L-39 took off from Traverse City Airport and flew north, carrying the plane number on the side of the plane, N as in Nora, 7868, M as in Mary. Now, I got these details off the NTSB report on this incident, and I reviewed 6 articles that had enormous errors in reporting. So they took off at 6:31. 6:44, local air traffic control at the airport asked Schaller for his location. Don stated they were 27 miles northeast of the airport, tracking to 246 degrees radial. He said he'd contact the tower when he was 5 minutes away. Everything normal, nothing unusual. Important point. Rodriguez was on the plane wearing headsets, listening to air traffic control, and talking to Schaller at the same time. He heard what Schaller said. I have no doubt whatsoever that what Schaller said was the truth about their location. Because if he was wrong, Rodriguez would have corrected him. And Rodriguez was telling him as they were flying, oh, that's this island, that's that island, this is this island. And they were around some islands. Shortly after communicating with the L-39, air traffic control tracked the plane on radar, turning west at 300 miles per hour, then tracked to a position off of Traverse City VOR at 344 degrees, or about 31.1 miles from the airport. The plane went off all radar near Fox Island. Now at this point, air traffic control is trying to raise the plane. And 7868 Mary, are you there? Please respond. They're asking on and on and on. Nothing. Now at the beginning, they might have thought, well, they're in this little souped up plane. Maybe it flew low on the deck just off of Lake Michigan to give Don Rodriguez a little thrill. Who knows? Maybe under the radar? Who knows? But they kept trying to raise the plane. Nothing. Well, there are 2 Fox Islands. Fox Island North, Fox Island South. And there's Beaver Island, and North Manitou Island, and South Manitou Island. So this is where they left from, Traverse City. This is the upper peninsula. This is Lake Michigan. This is Frankfort, Michigan, right here. This was the primary area they believed that that plane was in when it went off radar. I should tell you this. Fox Islands are right here. This is South Fox Island. Interestingly, South Fox Island has their own airport. So you got it now. Well, if the L-39 was still traveling 300 miles per hour, they would cover the 30 miles that they were from the airport in 6 minutes. Airport waited a short period of time, and then at 6:30 p.m., Air Traffic Control contacted the Coast Guard and requested a search be initiated for the L-39. Luckily, the Canadian military was at the air show, and they had a C-130 parked at Cherry Capital Airport where the air show was going to be at. And they advised that they had participated in the search. Also, the Blue Angels had their C-130 support plane there, and they also volunteered to search. So the Coast Guard decided to send out 2 helicopters into the search zone, and they also sent a 41-foot rescue boat into Lake Michigan. Now, they were leaving all from Traverse City. Interestingly, that rescue boat, 30 miles from Traverse City, traveling 30 miles per hour, would take an hour to get to that search area, primary search area around Fox Islands. But those helicopters can get there in minutes. At 6:44 p.m., the Coast Guard helos and the boats departed into that search zone looking for the L-39. The area, they kept going, they started around Fox Island, then they kept expanding. And what they're looking for is any disruption in the water, oil slick, gas slick, debris, anything. And they're also looking for witnesses. A lot of boats out in this area. And, interestingly, at around the same time that the L-39 took off, there was also a MiG in the air show that took off flying around the same area. The people in the MiG, they weren't Russian, the American pilots. They also reported seeing nothing, hearing nothing, no mayday, nothing. And they were in that same general area. They saw no disruption on the water, nothing unusual. Well, the search for the L-39 encompassed a total of 2,300 square miles. From Frankfort, Michigan, which I showed you at the bottom, from Frankfort, Michigan, all the way to the shore of the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and around North and South Manitou Islands, Fox Island, and Beaver Island. Islands I was telling you about, Fox, Manitou. Kind of get a feeling for where they were at. Now, if he was around Fox Island, he was on a perfect flight path to come into Traverse City. As the air show continued on July 4th, there was this massive international search going on for Dawn and Dawn. And people were getting confused. Where could that plane go? Nobody heard anything. Nobody has seen anything. And at 10:35 p.m. on July 4th, the Coast Guard called off all their searchers, because they had searched deep into the night before and stayed out late the night tonight on the 4th. They were using FLIR, which means that they can fly in complete darkness and still look for things on the water. They had found nothing. But on July 4th at 10:35 p.m., them calling off the search, that may be a record for the shortest search I've ever heard of by a government agency. 28 total hours. I was stunned when I heard that. Their report, they didn't find any wreckage, bodies, gas or oil slick. No witnesses were found anywhere on the water or in the air. Nothing. Now, I was curious about the weather at the time. 10-mile visibility, no precipitation, wind at 10 knots. The ceiling was at 11,000 feet, meaning that's how high the clouds were up off the water. Essentially perfect flying conditions. The next day, the Civil Air Patrol, July 5th, realizes, along with Michigan State Police, that they could give this a little more effort. And they committed 2 search and rescue teams to fly and 2 rescue aircraft to fly. And remember what I said about Don Rodriguez's son? Oh, he was still flying. And he jumped in with the Civil Air Patrol and continued the search for his dad. They searched the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. They kept expanding out, but they stayed in that same search zone. The only thing that was found, and this is amazing, is they found what they thought was something odd, a canister on the water. They spotted it from the air. They had one of their boats go out and get it. It was a Coast Guard smoke canister that they had dropped trying to check the currents in the area to see which way the wreckage would have gone. That is how thorough that search was. They saw a canister on the water. Amazing. Well, on July 8th, the Civil Air Patrol held another press conference. They stated that they had found nothing in their search. Now, it's important, I think, to remember a few things here. I don't know if you could find 2 more experienced pilots in one plane at any one time in Michigan on that day. Total flight time between the 2 of them was over 15,000 hours. Now, Don Rodriguez was a flight instructor. There was no Mayday call. The plane was in the area for the air show. Nobody saw anything from the ground. Nobody heard anything that they could actually report as a crash where they found anything. And all the people that were listening to air traffic heard nothing. No debris or gas leak, even though, this is important, that L-39 was filled with 183 gallons of fuel when it left. If it crashed on the water, there should have been a gas leak that was huge because it had only been in the air 15 minutes. They didn't know if a parachute or ejection seats worked or were functional. This all happened within 31 miles of the airport. Very interestingly, later that summer, people came out and they side scanned the area where the plane was last heard from. The depths of Lake Michigan in that area were 300 to 400, 500 feet deep in there. It's like if you wanted a plane to crash and never be found, that would be the place. And then in 2009, there was another effort to find the plane. This effort, they found a sunken boat and they thought was another plane next to this boat at 450 feet down. They put divers down and they couldn't get to it for whatever reason. And very odd, they never used any remote craft to go down and check it. They just gave up. And I don't understand that, because there's a lot of remote craft right now that could easily get down to 450 feet and look around and see what it is. So my gut tells me it must not be anything related to what happened to Dawn and Dawn. So, this area around Michigan. So we've covered the Upper Peninsula very thoroughly. Remember a college student disappeared up there? We've covered the northeast section of Michigan. Over here, the recent clusters. And then further down the western side of Michigan, on Lake Michigan, there's a whole series of disappearances of small planes, Civil Air Patrol planes, and I've talked about it already before. I don't want to waste my time with you, but an airliner disappeared and was never found. Yeah, Northwest Airlines. Oh yeah, disappeared out in Lake Michigan, never found. You tell me how that dog hunts, all right? I'm sorry, friends. I'll say this straight up. Something very odd is going on around Michigan and the Great Lakes. It's been going on for a long time. It's going to continue to go on. So, thank you for being here. Please share this video. Make sure you are subscribed. The last couple videos, I've had a ton of people say, Dave, I'm not getting your notifications. I'm not even subscribed. YouTube's trying to sink the, YouTube's trying to sink the ship. But don't let them do it. Remember, the link to all my videos, I usually put up on the first comment of the video. Bookmark that, you'll never lose me. Every other day I post, I'll be there. In the meantime, this summer, I'll be in Ocala, Florida. If you go to GatherUp, GATHERUP, GatherUp events, just Google that and it'll come up. It'll list Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and it'll list Ocala, Florida. And in that same link, it'll also list the Missing 411 and Bigfoot cruise to Alaska that leaves in September from Seattle. I'll be at those 3 events, guaranteed. Hopefully I'll see you at one of them. Thanks. Check our website, missing411.com. We've got some real cool merch. Also got a sweatshirt now, Missing 411 National Park sweatshirt. You guys complained before. Hey Dave, get some merchandise up. Okay, sweatshirts are up. Missing411.com. Be safe, be kind. Kindness is key. Paulides out.